the West Coast Express versus the Sedin twins. It's one of the greatest debates in Canucks history, and we're going to settle it today here on Locked On Canucks.
You're Locked On Canucks, your daily podcast on the Vancouver Canucks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, welcome to another episode of Locked On Canucks. My name is Trevor Beggs, Canucks writer and credentialed media member for Daily High Vancouver. And before we dive into the show, we got to thank you for tuning into Locked On Canucks, especially here in August. It's your team, kind of, sort of, not really, almost every day. But no matter whether you're tuning in live, whether you're tuning in 2 weeks later, go make sure you subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. And before we get into the episode as well, I got to tell you, go to birddogs.com/LockedOnNHL or enter promo code LockedOnNHL for a free white tech hat with any order. You won't want to take your bird dogs off. We promise ya. Okay, coming up on today's episode, we want to go through one of the greatest debates in Canucks history, the West Coast Express line versus the Sedin Burrows line, which is the greatest line in Canucks history. We'll also touch on some other great lines as well. I have no idea which way I'm even leaning. We might even find out halfway through this episode. Who knows? You don't know. I don't know. Does anybody know? But first and foremost, let me introduce my co-host, Kyle. I'm not even sure if he knows what is the greatest line in Canucks history. But what do you think, brother? How you doing today?
Well, I think the best way to have this conversation, because it is so blatantly subjective and also I wouldn't say unrelatable, but hard to ask because of the eras both these lines dominated in, slightly different. So I think the way to have this conversation and the best way to have this conversation is asking, who would you have for one game to win you a game? Which line? Because that's fair. That's fair. Anyways, Kyle Bowen, Trevor Beggs, Locked On Canucks, your team almost every day. Man, September's coming up, which means we got to go back to full time. And that's something I'm going to be ready for because I'm reading this book right here, okay? It's called 4,000 Weeks. 4,000 weeks. You may have what? How many weeks are in a year?
52.
52. I'm going to have 4,000 weeks in a year, okay, after reading this one. But like I said, I'm Kyle Bound. That's Trevor Beggs. Enough about us, enough about our lives. Let's talk about you for a couple seconds. We'll get to Comment Corner at the end of the show. We've been talking a lot about fighting recently over the last couple of episodes. We had one suggestion that made me kind of think and made me kind of laugh. We'll get to that at the end of the episode. Hey, speaking of fighting, you know what? I was going to say this. I was going to say, one line had it and the other line didn't. You know, the West Coast Express, Bertuzzi versus the Sedins and Burrows. But, Burrows was kind of scrappy and kind of scrappy often, for real. So both these lines had that edge to them. And both these lines were dominant. And I'm curious to see who you would rather have for one game, do or die. We're talking the worst case scenario, okay? You got to win a hockey game. And if you lose, your family's getting shipped to Ireland, okay? And it's just, and you're banned from Ireland. If you don't know this, Trevor Beggs is banned in Ireland. So it's like worst case scenario. You need to win a game. Who you picking?
Yeah, it's such a tough debate. I flip, even as we prep for this episode, I flip flop back and forth. Just the clinical nature of the Sedin twins being able to get it done. But I think at their peak, I'd probably take the West Coast Express in one game if you're going do or die. And I think we might have talked about this before, and I might have picked the Sedins another time. We're not going to worry about that. Whether it's true or not, who knows? Don't go tune into our episodes from 2 months ago. But yeah, I think I'm going West Coast Express. Here's one crazy stat I pulled from the West Coast Express era. So from the seasons 2000, 2001 up until 2003, 2004, Marcus Naslund led the league over a 4-year stretch with 353 points in 313 games. The things that these guys were doing in the dead puck era when no one was scoring was unbelievable. And Tom Bertuzzi also, he's in the top 10. He had 297 points in a 302 game stretch while absolutely running over the competition on a nightly basis. So, I mean, we were blessed through the early 2000s and the late 2000s with the Sedins and the West Coast Express. But I think one game, do or die. Naslund, Bertuzzi at their peak with BMO on that line. I'm taking the West Coast Express.
And I'm gonna put you on the point, put you on the spot right away. Why though? I'm talking about stylistically. Why do you think you'd much rather have that line be the top line on this imaginary team? Like, what do you think they did on the ice strategically that would have them winning that competition over Henrik, Daniel, and Burrows? When those three, the triplets, the chemistry was unmatched. So, yeah, I'm curious because I think I know the answer, but I want you to poke at this because I think you're going to help me refresh my memory when it comes to what those three actually did on the ice, West Coast Express, stylistically.
So I think when we look at the Sedins and their cycle game, which was phenomenal, I do think they picked up elements of that from the West Coast Express. I think those guys had an influence on
Ooh.
what the Sedins actually ended up doing throughout their NHL careers. If you look at old West Coast Express highlights, I mean, Bertuzzi was just an absolute beast on the boards. Naslund and Morrison were pretty slippery. They were able to get the puck. And I think they were just able to find each other on the ice. Very much like similar in the way the Sedins do it, except Henrik and Daniel had this telepathy that was unmatched. But just the way those three players, Brendan Morrison, Todd Bertuzzi, and Marcus Naslund, all worked to find open space in the ice. And they all brought a different element to that line as well, with kind of BMO being the setup man, Bertuzzi going to the net, Naslund being the sniper. There's just such great balance. And I think they moved better than most guys at the time too. They were moving, they were grooving, they
Mhm.
were moving the shoulders. Okay. They were getting it done.
Mm,
Again, in a one game scenario, it
yeah.
probably depends on the matchup a little bit too. But hey, we got to pick a line here, and I
I
think
know,
it's
I
a
know.
toss up between the two. And I would just go with the West Coast Express at their peak. I think they were just doing things at the time that was so different from anything else that was happening in the NHL.
And speaking of different, I thought your answer was that line because we're talking about a one game scenario, and out of all six of those players in one game, who's the most dominant? Who's the outlier? It's not Henrik or Daniel. It's Todd Bertuzzi. In one game, he can change a game. He can intimidate and contribute at, no, I wouldn't say again, one game at a similar level than Henrik, Daniel, and Naslund. He's just that damn good when he was that damn good for that time in his career. He was amazing. Like, I feel as if he wasn't like the Eric Lindros of our era because he didn't have like the long span, but at his peak, and if things went a little differently, I feel as if we could have seen more for Bertuzzi for at least 2 or 3 more years. Like more 100-point seasons, more 50-goal seasons. He was that dominant if he
Yeah,
chose to play the exact same way. But yo, things happen. Things happen. Just driving to work today and understanding that this is what we talk about. I was thinking a lot about, again, the dominance of Henrik, Daniel, and Burrows. And there was definitely that feeling. And it was similar to what we got with the West Coast Express, but every time those guys went on the ice for like 2 or 3 years, you really thought that they were going to score. They were always generating, but man, there was a really good chance that they were going to score. And I think you have to prioritize the fact that Henrik and Daniel actually won like real awards, real
yeah,
awards, like scoring titles and a Hart Trophy. That's ridiculous. They were dominant, not in the dead puck era. They were the best offensive players in the league when Ovechkin and Crosby were, at one of their first peaks. But on contrary to that, Naslund and Bertuzzi and Morrison, they were in the dead puck era, but they were playing 8 games, 6 games a year against the other best players in the league. Joe Sakic, Peter Forsberg,
yeah.
Milan Hajduk. It's it's interesting. We were blessed, man. We were blessed. And maybe you had that answer because in one game, I'm picking the West Coast Express too, which is crazy. It's crazy. Because my best years as a Canucks fan were with the Sedins and Burrows. They almost took us there. And Burrows was a big part of that, scoring clutch goals. More clutch than any of the players on the West Coast Express. But in one game, I'm picking the West Coast Express.
Hmm.
And they're the ones that got me in love with the Vancouver Canucks. And I'm a loyal dude. You know that. Come on. Who else can you throw a frisbee with? Me and Begsy hung out yesterday and we did a lot of things. We were jamming to music, just talking about life, getting deep, communicating. Not a little bit of Canuck talk, but none recorded. We were being friends yesterday, throwing the frisbee, and loyalty matters. And if it wasn't for Todd Bertuzzi, Marcus Naslund, or Brendan Morrison, like you said, the same people that taught Henrik and Daniel, you and I would not be friends. You and I and the listeners would not be here. So I got to be loyal. And in one game, because of Bertuzzi, because of the loyalty, I'm picking the West Coast Express. Hey, let us know in the comments below, who would you pick? You got one game. Your family is on the line. If your team loses, your family's getting shipped. You're never seeing them again to the shadow realm, okay? For real, to the other side. I hate to get dark here, but hey, we talking scenarios, baby.
Yeah, and I think this is a great debate because, again, I think the question, like you said, Kyle, you phrased it in a great way. What line are you taking to win one game? Because if you look at longevity, it's Sedins and Burrows, right? They were together for a stretch that was more like 6-7 years long instead of the West Coast Express, which is more
Dude,
of
and they
a
had better teams.
3-year stretch.
They were on better teams.
Yeah.
Like, it's not even stylistically the eras, like 2002, 2005 versus 09 or 08 to 2012. Okay, that's cool. Like the game was played a little differently, but at the same time, Henrik and Daniel were on better teams, like deeper teams, well-managed teams. Whereas the Canucks, they were still good. Don't get me wrong. They had a good team. Brian Burke did his thing with like limited cap space compared to, the Colorados and the Detroits, but the Sedins had it a little easier.
Yeah, a little bit. It's still incredible what they pulled off. Again, we're kind of comparing, two amazing things here. I actually wanted to bring up one quick stat about this Alex Burrows and the Sedins in their prime. So, between 2009, 2010, and the 2011-2012 season, at even strength over 205 games, Burrows and the Sedins scored 132 even strength goals, and they were only on the ice for 59 even strength goals against. Pretty incredible stuff. I mean, again, I think, I would argue these are probably two of the best lines of the 21st century, to be honest, not even just two of the best lines in Canucks history.
Dude, it's just the truth. I think if you're a real hockey fan, and I know so many of you guys are on the other side of the world or the other side of North America, and you guys are 3 hours behind and blah, 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 and you guys only got to watch highlights. Bro, come on, man. If we're talking about lines, we've been blessed, bro. I thought about this too when I was in the washroom. I'm like, yo, dude, has St. Louis really ever had like one of the best lines in hockey? Has Calgary had one of the best lines in hockey? You know what I'm saying? Like, you go down the list. Has Toronto ever had, like maybe recently with Marner and Matthew, but you know what I'm saying? Like, we've had two of them in the last 15 to 16 years. And I think we're going to get to this on the other side possibly, but can Pettersson be part of one of the greatest lines in Canucks history? I think he has to be. To be. I did have another question, but it slipped my mind, man. It was a good question. Maybe they'll come back to me after break.
Yeah, you'll have time to figure it out after break. Okay. So on the other side, we're going to talk about fish around and see if we can come up with some of the other great lines in Canucks history. Again, nothing compares to the West Coast Express and the Sedin twins. But what other great lines can we talk about in terms of the Vancouver Canucks? But first, I got to shout out Birddogs, okay? Kyle, you and I are getting older, grumpier, crustier, and that's why, to keep us feeling young and fresh and sexy, we got to slap on some Birddogs apparel, okay? My track pants came in the mail. I got that free white tech hat, and now my wife won't let me leave the house unless I keep my Birddogs at home. She'd rather go inside my boxers, man, because you know what? Showing off my skinny legs, that's not as attractive as me walking out the door with some Birddogs track pants, okay? And you know what? I'm a sweaty guy, and I got to say, Birddogs, they use that anti-stick sweat wicking fabric that keeps you cool and dry all day long. Plus, with the shorts, they got built-in boxers, man. Come on, it's like you're walking around commando, but not really, okay? It's the perfect balance. So make sure that you go to birddogs.com/LockedOnNHL or enter promo code LockedOnNHL for a free white tech hat with your order. That's birddogs.com/LockedOnNHL or promo code LockedOnNHL for a free white tech hat. You won't want to take your Birddogs off. We promise ya.
By the way, before we get back to the show, I got to remind you again that every episode of Locked On Canucks will be available on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, your favorite podcatcher at 4:20 p.m. for no reason at all. Again, every episode of Locked On Canucks at 4:20 p.m. for no reason at all. Let's get back to the show.
Okay. We back. Locked On Canucks. Your team every day. Sort of, kind of, not really. In the summer, well, in August. 3 episodes per week. You never know. Depending on how I feel, maybe I'll hit you with one tomorrow. Okay, for real. You never know. Because I care about you. I really do. And Trevor Beggs does as well. And, Beggsy, we're blessed, man. We're blessed. I always say that, to be living on this side of the world and at the age of 30, still being able to find a way to have this opportunity to, again, talk to the city, talk to the fans of this team. I feel as if we've made it. And, yesterday when, you and I were together in the flesh, you asked me a question. You said, yo, Kyle, would you say you've had a good life in the first 30 years of your life? And I answered yes. And 90% of that reason was not because of my dog, not because I got the best parents in the world, not because of you, not because of my girl, not because of my homies, my colleagues, who are also my brothers for life. It's because of the the viewers here on Locked On Canucks, okay? For real.
Oh, wow.
For
There
real,
we
man.
go.
Come on, man. It's all about the people. They have us living the dream. Now, speaking of the dream, and we'll move on from the West Coast Express and the Sedins and the blah, 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 and the verses and which line would you rather have? We will. But first, I got to say, what if? What if? Because we weren't that far away from Henrik and Daniel being like 70 to 80 point guys at the time when Bertuzzi-Naslund and Morrison were doing their thing. I think we're like, maybe 2 years away from that? 3 years away from that? I know theoretically that's like 1,000+ days, but you never know. What if, right? What if Henrik and Daniel were able to produce at a 60 to 80 point clip consistently while the West Coast Express was doing their thing? It's one of those things you got to think about if you're a Canuck fan in an alternate universe, because we're probably getting past the second round for sure. 100%.
I mean, you'd like to think so. Yeah, that lockout really robbed us of what could have been, and obviously the Bertuzzi-Moore incident. That's another crazy what if that never happens. Like, does the West Coast Express stay together? Does Bertuzzi stay a Canuck for life? I mean, there's so many different rabbit holes you can go down, and I think Bertuzzi kind of mentioned on that West Coast Express podcast that he wishes he stuck it out, and that kind of the West Coast Express and the Sedins are kind of battling each other for power play time and being out there in the last minute of games. So it's a crazy what if scenario, man. Who knows if it would have led to cups or not, but it would have been a lot of fun at the very least. Now, Kyle, I don't know. When I think about the other great lines in Canucks history, I think great comes in quotation marks. It's just nothing compares to the West Coast Express and Sedins, but I did pull up an old article from Daily Hive, shout out Daily Hive, my other Canucks employer. And they wrote an article 6 years ago now, but the 4 best lines in Canucks history. Do we pull Trevor's trivia out? I don't know if you're going to be able to name the other 2, but we'll try it out. Okay, we'll try it.
Trevor's trivia starts now.
According to Daily Hive, there's the 4 best lines in Canucks history. We talked about 2 of them. Who are the other 2? Any idea?
I think like one easy answer is probably, and I don't know who was centering this line, but like whatever line McGillney and Burry were on, I'm assuming.
Because McGillney was not just here for such a short period of time. So I'll tell you, one of the lines is Greg Adams, Trevor Linden, and Pavel Bure.
Mm-hmm.
And this piece kind of mentions that, they weren't kept together as religiously as other Canucks lines, but they were a big line for the Canucks in the 94 Stanley Cup run. So the last line is from the 82 run. So I'm not sure if you're going to get this, but at least there's a hint for you.
I'm not. Just say it, dude. It's
Kurt Fraser, Thomas Gradine, and Stan Smeal. So this line apparently had some longevity. Wow. They were formed. They were called the kid line in 1978, but they kind of remained together during that 82 run. So they had a good stretch of 5 years together with some success in quotations, because the Canucks weren't making much noise aside from that. So apparently those are the other 2 great lines of Canucks history.
I got another one.
Interesting thing with sorry, what's that?
I said I got another one.
Okay, let's
but
hear
I'm gonna let you finish your tidbit on that 82 line. Okay.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say. So Daily Hive had a poll like which are the best Canucks lines in Canucks history. Fraser, Gradine, Smeal got 1.6%. No surprise. Greg Adams, Trevor Linden, and Pavel Bure 13.9%. And then Naslund, Morrison, Bertuzzi coming in second at 42.21%. Sedin and Burrows ahead at 42.24%.
Whoa.
So pretty much a deadlock between Sedin and Burrows and the West Coast Express. And I can see why, like we talked about, right? It's longevity versus who you take in that one game. And I think for me, it's longevity, Sedins, one game, West Coast Express.
I definitely think, and we're talking about the Vancouver Canucks, okay? The history book is short, even though they've been around for a very, 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 very long time. One of the best lines in Canucks history was the Lotto line.
Yeah, it had to be.
Yeah.
I thought about this too. I think Lotto line, they were so dominant that one season.
Hmm.
And the other one that popped out or stood out for me was Sedins and Anson Carter. I mean, that line was electric for a year as well. So it's hard to
Yeah.
classify them as like, all-time great lines when it was one season. But I think both those lines fall into similar categories.
I think we have to mention this because it's been such a theme of the show, and I feel as if my heart is warming up to it. And obviously, Bagsy's already made his decision. There's that like 5% chance that there could be something exponential offensively if Besser actually calls that first line his home as well with Kuzmenko and Pettersson. Because I know it was only 1 year, but again, watch the clip, the Dmitry Filipovich clip that he cut up about Kuzmenko and Pettersson. The chemistry's real, and it's going to get better because both players are going to get better, and they're intelligent, and they've already had 80-plus games together. Yeah, maybe the Mikheyevs and the Beauvilliers, those type of players complement what they got to do and can help them continue to do what they do. But I think there is that small chance because of you that Besser can be added to that line, and it can be one of, if not the best offensive line in hockey.
And maybe one of the best offensive lines in Canucks history, baby. Let's go.
Not saying much. Not saying much. I mean, again, if Pettersson is going to be one of the greatest Canucks of all time, and we want him to be here for a long time, yeah, he's going to have to put himself in that conversation. And that's, again, not rocket science. I did hear from Rick Dhaliwal today or yesterday, courtesy of Sakaris and Price, that he thinks that Pettersson and the Canucks may not agree on a deal this offseason because the Canucks may want to see if he can do this again. And they want to see
That's
if
crazy. Who said
the
that?
cap
Dhaliwal?
again, Dhaliwal again. There's a lot of things going on. Just go watch that interview with Dhaliwal and Sakaris, and no, it was actually Price and Jeff Patterson. But that kind of surprised me as well. But I don't think that's the truth. I don't think they want to. The only person or the only side that would want something like that happening may be Pettersson, but the Canucks definitely don't want that.
Kyle, you just ruined my day with this news, man. We need to refresh, recharge. On the other side, comment corner. Hopefully, there's some better Pettersson takes there. Or maybe we just won't talk about things that piss me off. Okay, but coming up next, comment corner here on Locked On Canucks.
Okay. We back, baby. Trevor Beggs, Kyle Bowen, Locked On Canucks. Hit us with the like button, subscribe, and leave us a review wherever you listen to podcast. Man, oh man, September again coming up. Full-time Canuck podcaster life really coming up. And I know we lived that life from March to the end of July, but come on, we weren't talking about anything. We've been assuming for months straight. Like, can we get a round of applause? For real. Another one? Because we've played the assumption game. We've used our imaginations for so long here. I cannot wait to just talk about hockey games. And I'm so hopeful that this team will be like at 700, through 30 games, or not 700, maybe like 650 through 30 games. And we'll be in the hunt, and we can continue to just talk about the games and not assume, right? Because it's boring, dude. It's boring. Now, before we get to comment corner, I got to ask Beggsy, because he's kind of like a bachelor right now. So how's the home looking, man? Have you cleaned it up? You said you still had stuff in your car from your trip last weekend. Like, dude, get your stuff together, man. You're a 30-year-old man now, okay?
You know what? The house is looking better from when my wife and kids left. Like, it felt chaotic because, last week I dropped my wife and kids at the airport. I go straight to work, super long day. I come home, I like quickly pack for Prince George, and I'm gone again. So the house is still like a pigsty from like packing up with the kids and stuff. So I come back from Prince George this week, and honestly, it was like stressing me out a bit. I don't know.
Yeah.
In some ways, I'm like, I like to keep things in order a bit at my home. I'm not like I don't really live like a pig usually. Yeah, there's some laundry. There's a pile of laundry and stuff like that. But it's my house is looking cleaner now than it did, a week ago when I was a bachelor.
There you go, man. Nothing more entertaining than this type of conversation on a hockey podcast. But hey, man, it matters. Begsy and I, we've been friends for a very long time. And, sometimes all the talking we do in our day to day is about the Canucks. So I got to squeeze in that personal question because friendships matter. Okay. If you're listening to this, check up on your friends. For real, for real, for real. Hey, speaking of your friends, you and I, yes, the listener, the viewer, and I, we're friends. Okay. And we got to do this, the best segment on the show, Comment Corner.
Welcome to Comment Corner, powered by Paraphrasing.
This comment comes from a person who may be a cat.
I think fighting would be way cooler if they kept their gloves and helmets on all the time. It's entertaining, it's safe, and even more entertaining.
Okay, this is, I don't know if interesting's the right word because I know it's never going to happen. And if you really do kind of think about it, maybe I lied because we do see a lot of this anyways, like a lot of face washing or, what I'm saying with the gloves in the hand and all that jazz. But yeah, fighting, man. Just, I feel as if people are still 50-50 about it. And I know we've had a very passionate conversation about fighting throughout the last couple of episodes, I guess, passionate conversations. And I feel as if the more and more I've talked about it this week, the more and more I'm like cemented in my stance. Cause again, I just don't think it's going away. I think hockey players, like real ones, not hockey assumers like us, they understand that as well. And they want it to be a part of the game. And if that's the case, I just want the league to kind of lean into it just to differentiate itself and grow. I know it's aggressive, man. This is coming from somebody who's never been in a fight. I think this is the better question. Okay. Trevor, maybe I've asked you this before, but have you ever gotten your ass kicked in a fight?
No, I've never just absolutely had the crap kicked out of me. I did lose one fight. So back when I was a teenager, we used to do like, let's call it drunken hill fights. And so just a bunch of guys, just wrestling on a hill basically. So I wanted to go
Whoa.
fight this one guy and he basically like went like he was going to punch me in the face and then kneed me in the balls. And like, from that point on, I was weakened. Right. So he was all over me. So that was probably the worst fight I've been a part of. Yeah, no, I've been in some fights. I've been on the losing end, but I've never really absolutely had my ass kicked, to be honest with you.
Dude, come on, man. I've said it so many times, bro. If I'm ever in a fight, do or die situation, I'm kicking that person in the balls. I'm doing it, man. It's not like the cameras are watching and I'm a professional fighter and I got a reputation. I got to survive, man. That's my reputation, to breathe another day. So if you're getting into a fight with me and I'm squaring up like I'm about to punch you in the face, you best believe I'm kicking you in the dick. For real, man. And yesterday,
Oh man, bad
last note,
memories.
okay? This has gone on a personal note for the last like 7 minutes of this show. Hey, Kyle Bowen, Trevor Beggs, Locked On Canucks. I thought about this, okay? I remember when I was like, yo, a girl wants me to give her massages and she's always in pain, she's always getting injured, and I'm always like, yo, dude, I'm tired. I'm a hockey podcaster. Like, what do you think? I think I'm just stronger. I went to therapy. I got through my insecurities. Dude, girl, if you need a strong man to massage you and I'm not doing it, go to a trained massage therapist. All right. And
Wow.
I'm totally cool with it. I'm not gonna just don't tell me his name. Don't send me no pics. Don't send me his profile on the website, But if you need a strong man, squeezing you professionally, I think I'm okay with it. Okay,
Yeah,
Locked On Canucks.
I'm sure my wife's been rubbed down by a male masseuse before, to be honest with you. So
Man. Okay, let's get
it's
out
the way
of
it
here,
goes, man.
Oh.
Yeah, this show took a turn when you mentioned to me that the Canucks want to wait and see what Pettersson does this year. That's what the show
Dude,
turned, man.
Dude,
Unbelievable.
am I paraphrasing Rick Dollywell's comments? I don't think so, man. He says a lot of things. He likes to talk. He's entertaining. He
No,
does his thing. He
and-
does
and
the work.
he's-
He's a historian. He's locked in.
Yeah.
He's locked in more than anyone. And I was like, okay, interesting. Interesting
the
stuff.
agents are also in his ear, and that sounds like someone an agent would say. But I digress
Ooh.
because it doesn't matter. Pettersson will sign here at 8 years at some point, and he's going to lead Vancouver Canucks to a Stanley Cup. That's the optimistic way to end the show. So, Caleb, we got to get out of here. Shout out to the everydayers, the occasional listeners. And if this is your first time listening, welcome to the program. Make sure you let us know, what is the best line of Canucks history? Are you West Coast Express? Are you Sedin twins? Or are you Kurt Fraser, Stan Smeel, and Thomas Gradine? Okay. Coming up on the program. So I hopped on the Locked On Sharks podcast and answered all things Canucks. We're going to post that on our feed as well. Kyle, maybe got a solo episode of Comment Corner coming up. And aside from that, I went through the rest of the ideas on the list yesterday. One thing that I might look to do here in August is ranking all the Canucks drafts in the 2010s. Okay.
Whoa.
Even 2019, we've got some time to dig in, sink our teeth into that one. So stay tuned for that coming up on the Locked On Canucks podcast network. But for now, I'm Trevor Beggs, and that guy's Kyle Bowd, and you've been listening to Locked On Canucks.